The Hollow Hunger. The mission to Europa began with great hope. For years, scientists had speculated about the possibility of life beneath the moon's thick layer of ice. Europa's subsurface ocean, hidden under miles of frozen crust, was believed to hold a key to understanding alien ecosystems and perhaps even the origins of life itself. When the first drilling probe broke through the icy surface and detected signs of liquid water, excitement rippled through the scientific community. Humanity was on the brink of a monumental discovery. A team of 6 astronauts was sent to explore the depths of Europa. Their spacecraft, named Odyssey, hovered above the moon's icy plains, its drills piercing through layers of frost that had remained untouched for millions of years. The crew worked tirelessly, their movement precise and methodical as they prepared to descend into the unknown. Each member of the team carried a sense of awe mixed with trepidation. They were venturing into territory no human had ever seen before, and while the potential for discovery was thrilling, the risks were immense. A team of 6 astronauts was sent to explore the depths of Europa. Their spacecraft, named Odyssey, hovered above the moon's icy plains, its drills piercing through layers of frost that had remained untouched for millions of years. The crew worked tirelessly, their movement precise and methodical as they prepared to descend into the unknown. Each member of the team carried a sense of awe mixed with trepidation. They were venturing into territory no human had ever seen before, and while the potential for discovery was thrilling, the risks were immense. As the drill reached the water below, the team deployed a submersible craft designed to withstand the crushing pressures of Europa's ocean. The craft, nicknamed Nautilus, was equipped with advanced sensors, robotic arms, and cameras capable of capturing every detail of the alien environment. Inside, Commander Laura Hayes led the operation, her calm demeanor masking the weight of responsibility she felt. Beside her sat Dr. Marcus Lee, a biologist whose expertise in extremophiles made him invaluable to the mission. Rounding out the crew were engineers Elena Torres and Raj Patel, geologist Dr. Sofia Alvarez, and pilot Jake Miller, whose steady hands guided the craft deeper into the abyss. The descent was slow and deliberate. The icy walls of the borehole glistened faintly in the submersible's lights, their surfaces smooth and unbroken. As they passed through the final layer of ice, the craft emerged into an underwater world unlike anything they had ever imagined. The water was dark, illuminated only by the craft's floodlights, which revealed strange formations rising from the ocean floor. Towering spires of rock jutted upward, encrusted with glowing organisms that pulsed faintly in shades of blue and green. The sight was breathtaking, but it was also unsettling. The bioluminescent creatures seemed to watch the intruders, their movements slow and deliberate. Dr. Lee leaned forward, his eyes wide with wonder. "This is incredible," he whispered. "It's like nothing we've ever seen before." His voice carried a mix of excitement and unease, a sentiment shared by everyone aboard the craft. They were witnessing something extraordinary, but the alien nature of the surroundings left them feeling exposed and vulnerable. Commander Hayes maintained a composure, though her grip on the controls tightened slightly. "Stay focused," she said, her tone firm but calm. "We're here to gather data, not get distracted." The craft moved cautiously through the alien landscape, its sensors scanning for signs of life. At first, the readings were promising. The water teemed with microscopic organisms, their chemical signatures suggesting complex biological processes. But as they ventured deeper, the sensors began to pick up anomalies, strange fluctuations in temperature and pressure, as well as faint vibrations emanating from the ocean floor. The vibrations grew stronger the farther they traveled, until the entire craft began to shake. "What's causing this?" Elena asked, her voice tinged with alarm. She checked the instruments, but the readings were erratic, making it difficult to pinpoint the source. "I don't know," Hayes replied, her jaw tightening. "But whatever it is, it's big." Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered. The glow from the bioluminescent organisms dimmed, plunging the craft into near darkness. A low rumble echoed through the water, reverberating against the hull. It was a sound unlike anything they had ever heard, a deep, guttural growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Jake adjusted the thrusters, trying to stabilize the craft. "Something's moving out there," he said, his voice tense, "and it's heading straight for us." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had known the mission would be dangerous, but none of them had anticipated this. Whatever was out there, it was alive and it was coming for them. The crew of the Nautilus froze as the vibrations intensified, shaking the submersible violently. The growl grew louder, more menacing, reverberating through the water like a warning. The floodlights of the craft swept across the dark expanse, revealing only shadows and shifting shapes. Then, without warning, something massive surged past the craft, moving so fast that it was little more than a blur. The force of its movement created a powerful current that spun the Nautilus around, sending alarms blaring inside the cockpit. "What was that?" Dr. Lee shouted, gripping the edge of his seat. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. "I don't know, but it's huge," Hayes replied, her voice tight with tension. She fought to regain control of the craft, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. "Jake, stabilize us. Everyone else, stay sharp." Jake wrestled with the controls, his knuckles white as he struggled to counteract the turbulence. The submersible shuddered again as another surge of movement rocked the water. This time, the lights caught a glimpse of the creature responsible. It was unlike anything any of them had ever seen, a colossal worm-like being, its body segmented and covered in jagged, metallic plates. Its mouth was a gaping maw filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. The creature's sheer size was overwhelming. It dwarfed the Nautilus, its length stretching far beyond the range of the floodlights. It's alive," Sophia whispered, her voice trembling. She clutched the edge of her console, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. How is something that big alive down here? "Focus!" Hayes snapped, her tone cutting through the growing panic. "We need to figure out how to handle this." The creature circled the craft, its movements deliberate and calculated. It wasn't attacking yet, but its presence was suffocating. Every movement it made sent shock waves through the water, forcing the crew to brace themselves against the walls of the submersible. The sensors went haywire, their readings fluctuating wildly as the creature's energy signature overwhelmed the equipment. "Whatever it is, it's feeding off our systems," Rod said, his voice strained. He frantically tapped at his console, trying to stabilize the readings. "It's draining power from the lights and thrusters." "We can't let it take us out," Hayes said. "Jake, get us moving. We need to put some distance between us and that thing." Jake nodded, his hands flying over controls. The thrusters roared to life, propelling the Nautilus forward. But the creature reacted instantly, darting ahead of them with impossible speed. It slammed into the front of the craft, sending a deafening clang echoing through the hull. The impact knocked the crew off their feet, and the lights flickered again, plunging the interior into darkness. "We're losing power," Rod shouted, his voice rising in panic. "If it keeps this up, we'll be dead in the water." Hayes scrambled to her feet, her mind racing. "Elena, reroute auxiliary power to the thrusters. Marcus, keep an eye on the sensors. If you see anything at all, tell me immediately." The crew worked in frantic silence, their movements quick and precise. Elena managed to restore partial power to the thrusters, allowing Jake to maneuver the craft again. But the creature was relentless. It rammed the Nautilus repeatedly, each strike more violent than the last. The metal groaned under the strain, and cracks began to form along the hull. "It's going to break through," Sophia cried, her voice breaking. She pressed herself against the wall, as if trying to escape the inevitable. "No, it won't," Hayes said firmly, though her own fear was evident in her clenched jaw and rapid breathing. "We're not dying down here." Suddenly, the creature paused, hovering just outside the range of the floodlights. The water grew eerily still, the vibration ceasing as if the beast had vanished. For a moment, the crew dared to hope that it had lost interest. But then, with terrifying speed, it lunged forward, its massive jaws snapping shut mere inches from the craft's viewport. The glass cracked under the pressure, and a thin stream of water began to seep through. "We have to get out of here," Marcus yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. Hayes didn't hesitate. "Jake, full power to the thrusters. Aim for the surface. Now!" With one final burst of speed, the Nautilus broke through the icy surface of Europa, emerging into the cold, empty void of space. The crew gasped for air, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and relief. But their reprieve was short-lived. Below them, the ice began to shift and crack, the creature's massive form breaking through the surface. It wasn't done with them yet. Back aboard the Odyssey, the crew gathered in the main lab to analyze the data collected during their harrowing encounter with creature. Despite their shaken nerves, they knew they had to understand what they were dealing with if they hoped to survive. The recordings from the Nautilus' sensors painted a horrifying picture of the entity they had awakened. The creature, which they had dubbed the Hollow Hunger, was unlike anything documented in Earth biology or even speculative xenobiology. Its massive, segmented body stretched over 50 meters in length, though some readings suggested it could extend even further when fully unfurled. Each segment was covered in overlapping plates of organic material that gleamed faintly with metallic sheen, giving the impression of armor plating. These plates weren't merely decorative, they served as heat sinks, absorbing thermal energy from its surroundings. Beneath the plates, clusters of fibrous tendrils pulsed rhythmically, siphoning energy from the water and converting it into fuel for the creature's relentless movements. Its most terrifying feature, however, was its mouth. The gaping maw was lined with concentric rings of jagged teeth, each tooth serrated and razor-sharp. The teeth glowed faintly with a bioluminescent blue light, illuminating the creature's path as it hunted. But the mouth wasn't just a tool for devouring prey, it was a weaponized vacuum, capable of generating intense suction forces that could pull smaller organisms directly into its throat. Once inside, the prey was subjected to an acidic digestive system that broke down both organic matter and inorganic materials alike. The creature's stomach contained specialized enzymes that could dissolve metals, plastics, and even synthetic compounds, allowing it to feed on technology as easily as flesh. What made the hollow hunger truly unique was its ability to consume energy sources. Sensors indicated that it could detect and absorb electromagnetic fields, drawing power from nearby electrical systems. During the encounter, it had drained the Nautilus's thrusters and lights, leaving the craft vulnerable. This behavior suggested that the creature wasn't just a predator, it was a parasite, feeding on the lifeblood of its environment to sustain itself. Its energy consumption wasn't indiscriminate either. The crew noticed patterns in its attacks, as if it prioritized high-energy targets first, systematically dismantling the submersible systems in order of importance. The creature's movements were equally unnerving. Despite its size, it moved with shocking speed and precision, darting through the water like a torpedo. Its body undulated in rhythmic waves, propelling it forward with bursts of acceleration that defied the laws of hydrodynamics. This agility allowed it to close distances rapidly, ambushing prey before they could react. Even more disturbing was its apparent intelligence. The way it had circled the Nautilus, probing for weaknesses and targeting critical systems, hinted at a level of awareness far beyond instinctual behavior. It wasn't simply hunting, it was strategizing. The crew's analysis also revealed traces of ancient genetic material embedded within the creature's structure. Fragments of DNA from extinct microorganisms and long-dead species suggested that the hollow hunger had been evolving for millions, if not billions, of years. It was a relic of Europa's distant past, a predator that had adapted to thrive in the harshest conditions imaginable. Over time, it had grown larger, stronger, and more efficient, becoming the apex predator of its ecosystem. The realization chilled the crew to the bone. They had disturbed something that had been lying dormant for eons, and now it was awake. As they pieced together these findings, the implications became clear. The hollow hunger wasn't just a threat to their mission, it was a threat to everything. If it escaped Europa, its insatiable appetite for energy and biomass would make it nearly unstoppable. Humanity's technology, its infrastructure, even its very existence, would be at risk. The crew stared at the data in stunned silence, knowing they had unleashed a nightmare that could consume not just them, but the entire solar system. The hollow hunger's emergence from Europa's icy depths marked the beginning of humanity's darkest hour. With each passing moment, the creature demonstrated an uncanny ability to adapt, evolve, and overcome any obstacle placed in its path. Its initial assault on the Nautilus had been devastating, but it was only the start of a campaign of destruction that would leave the crew and eventually the entire Odyssey fighting for survival. Once free of the moon's surface, the hollow hunger wasted no time in pursuing the orbiting spacecraft. Its massive form writhed through the vacuum of space, propelled by jets of superheated water ejected from pores along its segmented body. The crew watched in horror as the creature breached the thin atmosphere of Europa, its glowing maw opening wide as if tasting the airless void. It didn't seem hindered by the lack of oxygen or gravity. Instead, it moved with purpose, homing in on the Odyssey like a missile locked onto its target. The spacecraft defensive systems were woefully inadequate against such a foe. Automated turrets fired bursts of plasma at the creature, but the shots glanced harmlessly off its metallic plates. Electromagnetic pulses, designed to disable hostile drones or ships, had no effect on its organic circuitry. The hollow hunger absorbed the energy with ease, its tendrils pulsing brighter as it grew stronger. "It's using our weapons against us," Raj muttered, his voice hollow with disbelief. "Every shot makes it bigger." Desperation drove the crew to improvise. Commander Hayes ordered the deployment of decoy drones, small robotic probes programmed to emit heat and electromagnetic signals. The tactic worked at first. The hollow hunger veered away from the Odyssey, lured by the false targets. But the victory was fleeting. Within minutes, the creature had consumed the drones, assimilating their energy and technology into its own structure. Its movements became faster, more coordinated, as if it had learned from the encounter. "It's evolving again," Dr. Lee said, his voice trembling. "We're running out of options." Inside the spacecraft, the situation grew dire. The hollow hunger's relentless pursuit disrupted the Odyssey's systems. Power fluctuations caused lights to flicker, life support to falter, and communication arrays to fail. The crew scrambled to maintain basic functionality, but the creature's proximity made repairs nearly impossible. Every time someone ventured into the outer corridors to fix a malfunction, the ship shuddered violently, throwing them off balance. "It's testing us," Sophia whispered, clutching a wrench tightly, "like it knows where we are." The psychological toll was just as severe as the physical danger. Sleep became a luxury none could afford, as the constant tremors and alarms kept everyone on edge. Meals were skipped, conversations were terse, and paranoia began to creep in. Was the creature intelligent enough to mimic their voices? Could it breach the hull and invade the ship? These questions haunted their thoughts, gnawing at their resolve. Elena, usually calm and composed, broke down during a routine diagnostic check, sobbing uncontrollably as she muttered about teeth in the walls. Even Commander Hayes, who had always been a pillar of strength, showed cracks in her armor. Her hands shook as she issued orders, and her voice wavered when she addressed the crew. Their attempt to fight back only fueled the creature's aggression. When Jake piloted a shuttle to distract the hollow hunger, it responded with ferocity that shocked them all. The shuttle was torn apart in seconds, its debris consumed before it could even reach a safe distance. The loss of the shuttle and the supplies it carried was a devastating blow. "We're trapped," Marcus said, his voice heavy with despair. "There's no way out." Yet, amid the chaos, the hollow hunger's intelligence became undeniable. It didn't attack randomly or blindly. It targeted specific systems, isolating the crew and cutting off their means of escape. It disabled propulsion engines first, stranding the Odyssey in orbit. Then it severed the communication relays, ensuring no distress signal could reach Earth. Finally, it began breaching the outer hull, its tendrils probing for weak points. Each incursion forced the crew to retreat further into the ship, abandoning sections to the creature's insatiable hunger. The final straw came when the creature breached the cargo bay. The crew had stored emergency rations, spare parts, and critical equipment there, hoping to buy time. But the hollow hunger consumed everything in moments, its glowing maw expanding to swallow entire crates whole. The loss of resources left them with no margin for error. "We're not going to last much longer," Raj said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's too smart, too strong." Commander Hayes stood in the center of the command deck, her face pale but resolute. She knew the truth. They couldn't win. Not against something like this. But surrender wasn't an option. Not yet. "We keep fighting," she said, her voice firm despite the hopelessness in her eyes. "For as long as we can." The hollow hunger loomed closer, its massive form blotting out the stars. The crew braced themselves, knowing the end was near. But even in their darkest hour, a spark of defiance remained. They wouldn't go quietly. They would make the creature earn its victory. As the crew of the Odyssey struggled to survive against the relentless onslaught of the hollow hunger, Megan Harper, the mission's lead astrobiologist, turned her attention to a chilling possibility. This creature might not be unique to Europa. Buried in the data collected during their descent into the moon's ocean, she discovered faint but unmistakable traces of similar energy signatures scattered across the galaxy. These patterns matched the hollow hunger's behavior: voracious consumption of both organic and inorganic matter, followed by periods of dormancy. The implications were staggering. If the creature had counterparts elsewhere, then humanity was facing not just a localized threat, but a cosmic menace capable of eradicating entire civilizations. Megan spent hours poring over the telemetry data, cross-referencing it with archived observations from other missions. One particular anomaly stood out: a distant exoplanet orbiting a dying star in the Andromeda Galaxy. Decades earlier, a deep space probe had recorded strange disturbances on the planet's surface: massive sinkholes, collapsed cities, and an atmosphere stripped of all trace gases. Spectral analysis revealed remnants of organic compounds eerily similar to those found in the hollow hunger's composition. The planet had been declared lifeless, its ecosystem annihilated, but no one had understood why. Now, Megan suspected the truth. The same kind of creature had once ravaged that world, consuming everything until there was nothing left. Further investigation uncovered more examples. On a moon orbiting a gas giant in a nearby star system, abandoned mining colonies showed signs of sudden, catastrophic collapse. Equipment lay scattered and corroded, as though devoured by an unseen force. In another case, a research outpost studying a rogue asteroid reported bizarre energy drains before abruptly going silent. The common thread was undeniable. Wherever these creatures appeared, they left behind barren wastelands devoid of life or resources. Entire ecosystems were erased, their energy siphoned away to fuel the growth of these monstrous predators. The scale of the devastation horrified Megan. These weren't isolated incidents, they were part of a pattern, a cycle of destruction that spanned galaxies. Each time the creatures emerged, they consumed until their environment could no longer sustain them. Then they entered a dormant state, waiting for new sources of energy to awaken them. Europa's icy shell had likely kept the hollow hunger sealed away for millennia, preserving it until humanity's arrival disturbed its slumber. But what about the others? How many more of these creatures were lying in wait, ready to emerge and feed? Her findings painted a grim picture of the universe. Life, it seemed, was not the dominant force in the cosmos. Instead, it existed in fragile pockets, constantly under threat from entities like the hollow hunger. Civilizations rose and fell, their achievements reduced to ash by these ancient predators. The thought weighed heavily on Megan. Humanity prided itself on its ingenuity, its ability to conquer challenges and expand into the stars. Yet here was proof that even the most advanced societies could be wiped out in an instant, their legacies erased without a trace. The realization brought a fresh wave of urgency to the crew's predicament. If the hollow hunger escaped Europa, it wouldn't stop at the Odyssey. It would head for Earth, drawn by the planet's abundant energy and biomass. Humanity's technological infrastructure, the power grids, satellites, and communication networks would be its first targets. Cities would fall dark, Economies would collapse and chaos would ensue. Then, once the machines were silenced, it would turn its attention to humanity itself. Flesh and bone would become fuel for its endless hunger. Megan shared her findings with the rest of the crew, her voice trembling as she explained the stakes. "This isn't just about us," she said, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "If we don't stop it here, it will spread. It will find Earth, and it will destroy everything we've built, everything we are." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. They had known the creature was dangerous, but this was different. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a battle to protect the future of their species. The knowledge that countless worlds had already fallen to similar horrors only deepened their resolve. They couldn't let Earth become another casualty in the hollow hunger's wake. Commander Hayes broke the silence, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "Then we stop it here," she said. "Whatever it takes." Megan nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. Stopping the creature seemed impossible. It was too strong, too adaptable, too relentless. But as she looked around the room at the faces of her crewmates, she saw determination burning in their eyes. They were scared, yes, but they weren't giving up. Not yet, and neither would she. The hollow hunger continued its assault on the Odyssey, its movements growing more aggressive with each passing hour. The crew worked tirelessly to fortify their defenses, scavenging parts from damaged systems to create makeshift barriers and traps. Megan joined them, her mind racing with ideas. If they couldn't kill the creature outright, maybe they could contain it. Maybe they could buy enough time for Earth to prepare. But deep down, she knew the odds were against them. The hollow hunger was a force of nature, a living embodiment of annihilation. It had destroyed world before, and it would do so again. All they could do was fight not for victory, but for a chance to warn others, to ensure that humanity wouldn't face this threat unprepared. As the creature's tendrils breached another section of the hull, Megan clenched her fists and whispered a silent vow. "We'll stop you," she said, "or die trying." The battle raged on, the fate of humanity hanging by a thread. The crew of the Odyssey knew they were running out of time. The hollow hunger had breached multiple sections of the spacecraft, its tendrils probing deeper with each passing hour. Power reserves were critically low, life support systems were failing, and morale was at an all-time low. Yet, amidst the chaos, Megan Harper refused to give up. Her mind raced with possibilities, searching for any way to halt the creature's advance. She recalled fragments of data from their earlier scans, details about the creature's vulnerabilities, or what few there seemed to be, its reliance on energy sources, its sensitivity to certain frequencies of vibration, and its apparent need for sustained absorption to maintain its growth. These were weak points, slim as they were, and Megan clung to them like lifelines. She proposed a desperate plan. Overload the Odyssey S-reactor core and use the resulting explosion to create a massive electromagnetic pulse EMP. Theoretically, the EMP could disrupt the creature's energy-absorbing capabilities, stunning it long enough for the crew to escape in the remaining shuttle. It was a risky strategy. Overloading the reactor meant sacrificing the Odyssey entirely, and there was no guarantee the EMP would work. Worse, if the timing was off, the explosion could kill them all. But it was the only option they had left. Commander Hayes listened intently as Megan outlined the plan, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded. "Do it," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision. "But we'll need volunteers to stay behind and execute the sequence. Someone has to make sure the reactor goes critical at the right moment. Silence filled the room as the crew exchanged uneasy glances. No one spoke, the gravity of the situation pressing down on them like a physical force. Then Megan stepped forward. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm. "I know the reactor better than anyone. If anyone can time this right, it's me." Hayes hesitated, her eyes locking with Megan's. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. "We'll draw lots if we have to." Megan shook her head. "No, this is my responsibility. I'm the one who pushed for the mission to Europa. If anyone's staying, it's me." The crew protested, but Megan wouldn't budge. Her decision was final. As the others prepared the shuttle for evacuation, she worked feverishly to rig the reactor for overload. The process was painstaking, requiring precise calculations and careful adjustments to ensure the EMP would cover the necessary radius. Every second felt like an eternity, the creature's movements growing louder and more violent as it closed in on her position. When the time came, the rest of the crew boarded the shuttle, their faces etched with grief and gratitude. Hayes stayed behind for a moment, placing a hand on Megan's shoulder. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything." Megan managed a faint smile. "Just get out of here," she replied. "Make sure Earth knows what's coming." As the shuttle detached from the Odyssey and drifted towards safety, Megan activated the countdown sequence. The reactor hummed with increasing intensity, its vibrations rattling the walls around her. She braced herself against the console, her heart pounding as the numbers ticked downward. Outside, the hollow hunger surged toward the spacecraft, its glow opening wide as if sensing the impending explosion. The final seconds passed in a blur. Megan closed her eyes, her thoughts drifting to Earth, to the billions of lives that depended on her sacrifice. She whispered a silent prayer, hoping her actions would buy humanity the time it needed to prepare. Then, with a deafening roar, the reactor detonated. The EMP surged outward, enveloping the hollow hunger in a blinding wave of energy. For a moment, the creature froze, its movements halting as its systems overloaded. The shuttle's crew watched from a safe distance, their faces illuminated by the fiery aftermath. The Odyssey was gone, reduced to a cloud of debris, but the hollow hunger remained, its massive form twitching as it struggled to recover. Megan's plan had worked, but only partially. The creature was weakened, its progress slowed, but it wasn't destroyed. As the shuttle sped away, the crew knew their fight was far from over. The hollow hunger would heal, it would adapt, it would continue its relentless pursuit. But thanks to Megan's sacrifice, they had bought humanity a slim, fragile chance to survive. In the quiet moments that followed, the crew mourned their lost comrade. Megan's bravery had given them hope, but it was a hope tempered by the knowledge that the real battle was just beginning. The hollow hunger was still out there, and Earth was its next target.